Hey everyone, welcome back to another lesson. So in this one, we're going to talk about functions with inputs, a very important concept that is going to really complete your knowledge on functions, and it's going to get you closer to being an expert with functions. Now, we're going to cover more about functions later on, especially functions with outputs in the future sections, but this is an expansion on the function that you've learned so far. So, so far, based on what we talked about functions, we know how to create a function. We use the def keyword, which is define, and then we create our function name and add two parentheses and, a column, and then we define whatever, argument or whatever, code that we want to have under it. And then we call this function in a code. And that's pretty simple. That's a really, really simple concept. But, this is not the only thing you can do with functions. In fact, that's what we learned here was actually a very simple part of it. You're really not going to be using functions like this, or rarely will you use functions like this. But in reality, you're going to be using functions more like using them as an input to refer into something specific in that function. So here's what I mean. So we're going to talk about functions with a parameter. Now, the idea with this, or functions with parameters or inputs, is that you can define something and that function is going to react based on what you define. So for example, in this particular one, as you can see, our functions is actually a little bit different. So we got the define keyword, right? And then we got the function name, which is called greet, and then we got parentheses, but this time we actually have something inside a parenthesis. This is called a parameter. All right, so our parameter name is name, and then inside this function we have this code, which is just a simple print code. It says print and hi name. So what do you think is going to happen when we run something like this? Basically, if you run it, and that means that if we call this function and we add, let's say, name, my name in that function, what we're going to get as a result is this, hi Sean. So keep that in mind, guys. If you remember, what happened here is that we had a print code inside this function, and this is just a simple print, hey, hi name, and then we got the function parameter right here. So this function parameter is essentially going to be whatever you define when you call this function is going to be replaced right here with the print file here. So take a look. So when we call this greet function and give it a name, let's say Sean, it's going to print hi Sean. So it's very, very simple if you think about it. And there's another concept and that is functions with multiple parameters. And again, it is pretty much the same thing when you take a look at it. And what you do is, again, you can define it using a define keyword and then give it a name. And then you have multiple parameters here, name and city. In this case, this is a more complicated or advanced function. So what we have here is in the code of the function itself, we have a print function, and it says hello name from city, right? So when we actually call this function and when we replace these values, these parameters, these values are essentially going to be replaced here within this text, and we're going to print this. So think about what is going to happen. We're going to call it like this: greet and Sean and city, and then the result is going to be hello Sean from Newport Beach. Very simple. So as you can see, we got a few things. First of all, we got the argument. I wanted to define this for you guys. So the value that you enter inside a function is called an argument. But the value that the function has, like the actual parameters, is, when you define a function, is called a parameter. So just want to point this out, but this is what we call a function with an input. Again, the idea of it is very simple. You define a function and you give it, inside the parentheses, you give it your parameters, whatever the parameter is going to be, and you can use that parameter inside the function code to create your function, whatever that function is going to do. And then when you call this function, you can actually replace those parameters with whatever you want, whether in this case it's a string, but you can actually replace it with a variable or whatever you want. And again, that's the whole point of a function with an input. Essentially, you receive an input and you replace that within the code of the function itself. So this is the basics of a function with an input. I want to actually do a full practice on this. So in the next lesson, we're going to go over, I'm going to create a few functions to kind of show you this whole thing in practice so you understand it better. As always, you can download this PDF in a resources section. So just take a look at it, have it for yourself. And, if you want to just take notes from it, you can actually download, access it within the resources section. So let me know if you have any questions, guys. If not, I'll see you in the next lesson.